Good morning and welcome back from spring break. I hope you all had a great restful break and are ready to hit the ground running as we prepare for the EOC. Your milestone assessment is in 2 very short weeks, and so we are going to take 5 days of full review to make sure that you've mastered all of the content that we've learned over the last 9 months. Alright, so today we're going to start with solving equations and inequalities, and then we're going to talk about rearranging formula. We're also going to cover radicals and polynomials within this first day of review. So the first thing we need to review is the symbols that are used when solving inequalities. So this first symbol is a less than symbol, and this was one of the most commonly missed questions on your vocabulary quizzes. It was very frequent that you would get the less than and the greater sign mixed up. Remember that the less than sign looks like an L if you just turn it a little bit. So this would be greater than. This symbol here would be less than or equal to. This bar underneath the less than sign means it could be less than or equal to whatever expression is shown. And then lastly, we have greater than or equal to. When we are solving equations and inequalities, we need to remember that you add or subtract first, then multiply or divide. So first you're going to combine like terms. And then you're going to do the multiplying and dividing. When we are talking about inequalities, you need to remember that you're going to flip your sign when you divide or multiply by a negative number. So if you ever divide or multiply by a negative number, your less than becomes a greater than, or vice versa. If you have a greater than, it becomes a less than. The best way to make sure that you don't make any small mistakes is to show all of your steps. So we're just going to jump right in here, and I gave 6 review examples of solving equations and inequalities. So this first one says that 20 is equal to x over 4, and they want us to solve for x. Remember that a fraction is just a symbol for division. So we are going to be using inverse operations, and because this is division, we know that the inverse operation of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides, and I'm going to multiply by my denominator. When you multiply by that denominator, your denominator cancels out. 20 times 4 is 80. And then all we have left on this side is an x. So I get 80 equals x, which is the same thing as x equals 80. Remember, it could be written either way. Number 2 is an inequality. It says negative 6x plus 8x is greater than or equal to negative 16 plus 4x. So my first step is to combine like terms. I'm going to draw a line down my inequality symbol to keep my sides balanced. Negative 6x plus 8x. Negative 6 plus 8 is positive 2. So I have positive 2x on this side is greater than or equal to negative 16 plus 4x. Nothing can be combined on this side. Now I need to get all of my variables on one side and all my numbers on the other. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. That'll get all my variables over here, and it'll leave my numbers over here. So 4x cancels out. 2x minus 4x is negative 2x. Keep my symbol is equal to negative 16. And then last, to get x by itself, I'm going to divide by negative 2. Now, because I'm dividing by a negative, remember when you multiply or divide a negative, you flip your sign. So this greater than sign becomes a less than sign, and negative 16 divided by negative 2 is 8. So my final answer would be that x is less than or equal to 8. Moving right along, I'm going to draw a line down my equal sign to keep my sides balanced. First thing I need to do on this side is distribute this negative 10. Negative 10 times 1 is negative 10. Negative 10 times 4x is negative 40x. I'm going to leave that plus 12. Remember, when you distribute, you only distribute your coefficient to what's inside the parentheses. Don't worry about anything outside the parentheses. I'm going to do the same exact thing on this side. 6 times negative 7x is negative 42x. 6 times negative 8 is negative 48. And I'm going to leave that plus 6. My next step is going to be to combine like terms on each side. So I have a negative 10 and a positive 12 on this side. Negative 10 plus 12 is positive 2. So I have 2. I'm going to leave this minus 40x the same. On this side, I have a negative 48 and a positive 6. Negative 8 plus 6 is negative 42. And I'm going to leave this negative 42x the same. So all I did was I combined like terms over here, combine like terms over here. Now when I combine like terms and they have to cross this line, I have to use inverse operation. So I'm going to move all my x's first. I'm going to add 42x to both sides. I'm adding because the inverse operation of subtraction is addition. So whenever you have a minus sign, in order to cancel it out, you have to add. So that cancels out over here. And I'm left with 2 plus 2x equals negative 42. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. That 2 cancels out with that minus 2. I get 2x equals negative 44. Divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals negative 22. Number 4 is very, very similar. I'm going to draw a line down my inequality sign, and I'm first going to distribute. Negative 9 times x is negative 9x. Negative 9 times negative 4 is positive 36. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times negative 4 is positive 20. I'm going to check to see if I have any like terms on each side. Negative 9x and 36 are not like terms. Negative 5x and 20 are not like terms. So now I have to get all my variables onto one side and all of my numbers onto the other. So I'm going to add 5x, add 5x. That cancels out on the right. Negative 9x plus 5x is negative 4x. I'm going to drop down this plus 36 is less than 20. Subtract 36, subtract 36. That cancels out the 36 on the left. And I get negative 4x is less than 20 minus 36, which is negative 16. Once I just have all my variables on one side, all my numbers on the other, I'm going to divide out my coefficient, which is negative 4. Because I'm dividing by a negative, I have to flip my sign. So this less than sign becomes a greater than sign. So I get x is greater than 4. Negative 16 divided by negative 4 is positive 4. Numbers 5 and 6 are a little bit different because those are going to be our special case situations. And when I say special case, there's 2 special case situations for solving equations. You can have no solution or infinitely many solutions, and I have an example of each right here. So number 5, I'm going to do everything exactly the same. So I'm going to draw a line down my equal sign, and then I'm going to combine like terms. So 10 plus 6x, there's nothing to combine over here. 15 plus 9x minus 3x, I have this 9x and minus 3x that can be combined. So I have 15 plus 6x equals 10 plus 6x. I need to get all of my numbers on one side, all of my variables on the other. So I'm going to move this 6x to this side. 6x minus 6x cancels out. Then you have 6x minus 6x again. That cancels out. So I'm left with 10 equals 15, which makes no sense. We all know that 10 does not equal 15. 10 equals 10. 15 equals 15. So whenever you have a expression or an equation that doesn't make sense or is not true, you have no solution. So whenever you have you end up with 2 numbers that are different numbers, that makes no sense. 10 will never equal 15. 10 will always equal 10. 15 will always equal 15. Doesn't make sense, it's no solution. On the other hand, you could have a situation like this, where we're going to distribute first. So 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times 1 is 4 equals 8x plus 4. I'm going to cancel out my variables, subtracting 8x on both sides. Cancels out on both sides, and I'm left with 4 equals 4. Well, that makes sense. That always makes sense. And if you wanted to keep going, you could subtract 4, and that cancels out also. If everything cancels out, you have infinitely many solutions. Because no matter what value you plug in for x, the equation is always going to work. You could plug in a 1 here, you could plug in a 2, you could plug in any number, and the equation will always stand true. So that's when you have infinitely many solutions, when everything cancels out, or you're left with an equation that makes sense. 4 equals 4 makes sense. 4 will always equal 4. That's what it means. So that would be infinitely many solutions.